coloca-se com novos desafios. 30% da população mundial vive abaixo do limiar da pobreza. Uma parte importante dessa população não tem acesso a cuidados básicos de saúde. Uma parte importante dessa população não tem acesso a uma educação que lhes permita melhorar as suas qualificações e ambicionar ter um melhor futuro. É perante este cenário que nós queremos responder. Na verdade, nós fazemos 160 anos. Olhando para trás, nós sentimos muito orgulho e muita felicidade no papel que nós desempenhamos na sociedade. Sociedade esta que também tem demonstrado o seu agradecimento. Independentemente dos louvores, independentemente daquilo que nos tem sido atribuído, eu gostaria com muito orgulho de reafirmar que a esta instituição foram atribuídos 2 prémios Nobel da Paz, um dos quais em 1944. E foi-nos atribuído porque nós tivemos um papel incansável, mas um papel extremamente eficaz durante a Segunda Guerra Mundial. Eu diria que sem o papel da Cruz Vermelha, a mortalidade, o sofrimento e a dor daqueles que participaram ativamente na guerra teria sido muito maior. 160 anos. Mas deixem-me dizer-vos que nós não olhamos só para o passado. Nós preparamos-nos para o futuro. E preparar-nos para o futuro é termos confiança da nossa capacidade de rejuvenescermos quer a estrutura dos nossos colaboradores, quer dos nossos voluntários. Deixem-me dizer-vos que eu senti muito feliz com a idade dos voluntários que nos receberam. E o facto desta juventude estar disponível para, de uma forma voluntária, partilhar alguns dos projetos que nós ambicionamos realizar, isto inspira-nos confiança de que nós continuaremos a ter uma voz ativa e um papel relevante na resposta às exigências da sociedade. Deixem-me, contudo, dizer-vos que também sentimos alguma amargura. Nós não nos sentimos confortáveis quando somos confrontados com imagens nos canais televisivos que nos evidenciam de uma forma muito clara a fome que nós não conseguimos erradicar, a pobreza que nós não conseguimos minimizar. Na verdade, Cruz Vermelha, nós sofremos quando vemos uma criança a morrer de fome em África. E quando reconhecemos que com 2 euros por dia nós conseguiríamos alimentar essa criança. Isto para nós, Cruz Vermelha e Crescente Vermelho, é sem sombra de dúvida um chamamento ao reforço da nossa intervenção para mitigar a fome, para reduzir a pobreza. Nós queremos estar ao lado das pessoas mais vulneráveis. Contudo, o nosso propósito hoje não é falar-vos sobre aquilo que fizemos. É dizer-vos com clareza que também estamos a preparar para encarar os desafios futuros. Nós estamos a ser confrontados com um dos maiores desafios com os quais toda a humanidade se confrontou. As alterações climáticas, cujo impacto é imprevisível nos dias de hoje. Temos uma certeza. É que as alterações climáticas vão aumentar o fosso entre os mais pobres e os mais ricos. Vão aumentar o empobrecimento de algumas sociedades. Eu lamento dizer-vos que, relativamente a esta matéria, nós, países mais ricos, somos os grandes responsáveis pelas emissões de dióxido de carbono, que são uma das causas de algumas das alterações climáticas. Mas quem sofre as consequências do nosso desenvolvimento para assegurarmos o nosso bem-estar são os países que não poluem, são os países mais pobres. Não há menor. Hoje há um conjunto de episódios que demonstram à sociedade civil, porque os cientistas éticos competentes já o comprovaram há muito tempo. Mas hoje há um conjunto de episódios, alguns dos quais que sucederam bem próximo de nós, em Valência, em Itália, no centro da Europa, os incêndios em Los Angeles. Há um conjunto de episódios que são uma prova evidente de que as alterações climáticas já estão a influenciar a nossa qualidade de vida, o nosso bem-estar. Deixem-me dizer-vos que o conforto do nosso governo às vezes induz um desprezo por aquilo que são os efeitos das alterações climáticas em Moçambique, na Somália, na República do Congo. Estes sim estão a sofrer de uma forma muito marcante. Porque a falta de água, a perda de biodiversidade, a degradação da biosfera, está a ter um impacto muito marcante nessas sociedades. E nós não podemos deixar de reconhecer e não podemos deixar de felicitar a decisão de um pai que vive na Somália, que vê um filho a morrer com fome, vê a esposa a sofrer porque não tem leite para dar aos tantos filhos. E o pai mete pés ao caminho e durante muitos dias, fortemente influenciado por algumas máfias, procura atingir a Europa para ter um emprego, para ter um salário e para enviar uma parte do seu dinheiro para a sua família. Deixem-me dizer que isto é legítimo. E nós temos que reconhecer a legitimidade deste jovem que parte do centro da Europa, durante um mês caminha muitas vezes mal nutrido, por forma a chegar à Europa e poder trabalhar e enviar para a sua terra meia dúzia de dólares, meia dúzia de euros, que tem um impacto muito grande na qualidade de vida deles. Efetivamente, as Nações Unidas há muito se perceberam desta matéria. E em 2015, em setembro de 2015, as Nações Unidas publicaram a sua estratégia para a década de 2030, que designaram por estratégia de sustentabilidade, não apenas ambiental, mas também social. Na verdade, esta estratégia está fortemente suportada pelos 5 P's. E 4 dos 5 P's são muito marcantes. Não há prosperidade sem paz. Não há planeta sem prosperidade. E não há pessoas sem planeta. Quando nós, esta semana, fomos confrontados com a notícia de que nós, portugueses, mas não só nós, portugueses, tínhamos consumido os recursos que a Terra nos dá para todo o ano, isto significa que nós, portugueses, necessitaríamos de 2,5 planetas para dar resposta à nossa qualidade de vida, ao conforto da nossa viatura, ao queijo que compramos como embalagem, não importa proveniente de onde. Na verdade, isto é muito alarmante. E as Nações Unidas materializaram a sua estratégia em 17 Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável, que depois são desdobrados em cerca de 160 objetivos mais operacionais, cujos resultados são publicados pelas Nações Unidas semestralmente. Deixem-me com alguma lamentação dizer-vos que os últimos resultados publicados pelas Nações Unidas evidenciam uma divergência relativamente aos objetivos e não uma convergência. Alguns dos 17 Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável, que nós, numa leitura pouco atenta, podemos associar só aos povos africanos, aos asiáticos, diria àquilo a que nós erradamente chamamos muitas vezes de países subdesenvolvidos. Como o primeiro objetivo de desenvolvimento sustentável, erradicar a fome. O segundo objetivo, erradicar a pobreza. Deixem-me dizer-vos que esses objetivos também têm alguma evidência factual no nosso país e no nosso continente. Na verdade, a sociedade, ao contrário daquilo que estava perspectivado pelas Nações Unidas, não está a desenvolver esforços de uma forma conjugada, harmoniosa e alinhada para darmos respostas aos grandes desafios. Nós, Cruz Vermelha e Crescente Vermelho, também temos uma estratégia. Uma estratégia fortemente sustentada por 7 grandes transformações. Claramente alinhada com a estratégia das Nações Unidas. A nossa intervenção responde a um conjunto de objetivos de desenvolvimento sustentável. Não apenas ao primeiro e ao segundo, erradicar a fome, erradicar a pobreza, mas também ao 10º, minimizar a discriminação. Que é um foco não só de pobreza, mas é, na verdade, um foco de não otimização do potencial de algumas pessoas. Mas também o 10º, temos uma ação climática. Estamos aqui para isso. Porque nós sabemos que temos que nos preparar para responder a ondas de calor, para responder a apagões como aqueles que nós vivemos a semana passada, para responder a períodos curtos com uma periodicidade intensa como aquela que aconteceu em Valência, para responder a uma necessidade de uma franja da população cada vez mais envelhecida, algumas delas com reformas muito curtas e que não têm a capacidade que nós aqui presentes temos para viver com temperaturas mais elevadas, com periodicidades mais elevadas, para viver as consequências de um terremoto, de uma inundação, etc. Nós, Cruz Vermelha, Crescente, Vermelho, nós queremos dizer-vos, estamos a ganhar competências para, em conjunto com a Proteção Civil, em conjunto com outras entidades, podermos dar uma resposta aos desafios com os quais nós vamos ser confrontados. Deixem-me dizer-vos, antes de terminar, que nós hoje estamos perante um novo fenómeno, que muito nos entristece. Na verdade, há alguns países que não estão a cumprir os compromissos que assinaram nas convenções de Genebra. E isto, para muita dor da nossa parte, tem conduzido a que alguns voluntários da Cruz Vermelha, alguns colaboradores da Cruz Vermelha, estejam a falecer no quadro do exercício das suas funções. Isto aconteceu na Ucrânia, no final do ano passado. Aconteceu há pouco tempo com 5 médicos da Cruz Vermelha na faixa de Gaza. Isto aconteceu porque alguns países não estão a respeitar, tal como aconteceu na Segunda Grande Guerra Mundial. Porque, independentemente dos beligerantes, na Segunda Grande Guerra Mundial, todos eles respeitaram as convenções de Genebra. E por esse motivo nós podemos exercer o nosso papel protegendo os órfãos, reunificando famílias, salvando vidas. Eu sei que hoje é um dia de comemoração, mas não nos podemos esquecer daqueles voluntários da nossa instituição que faleceram. E daqueles que não faleceram, mas estão a sofrer as consequências do não cumprimento das convenções de Genebra. E por esse motivo, pese o facto de estarmos num dia de celebração, eu vou pedir-vos um minuto de silêncio simbólico em memória daqueles que faleceram, em memória daqueles que estão a sofrer e estão a impedir que nós façamos o nosso papel. Que é visitar os prisioneiros, que é segurar que a família está cá, que é proteger os órfãos e as crianças. E se não nos permitirem realizar o nosso papel, a sociedade fica mais pobre. E por esse motivo eu pedi-vos-ia que simbolicamente nos puséssemos de pé e, durante um minuto, fizéssemos em silêncio absoluto, em honra daqueles que hoje estão na frente das batalhas, a exercer o seu trabalho como voluntário e daqueles que faleceram. Muito obrigado. Muito obrigado. Em nome da Cruz Vermelha e do Crescente Vermelho. E eu termino agradecendo a todos os oradores. Tenho que mais para a participation. Agradecendo a todos vocês claro às cerca de 20 mil pessoas que se comprometeram com a nossa missão e que diariamente partilham o seu dia-a-dia, materializando em ações as nossas ambições e os nossos sonhos. Assim como os voluntários. E permitam-me, pelo facto de estarmos em Braga, pese o facto de estar perante uma população muito rica da Cruz Vermelha e de outras regiões, permitam-me uma palavra de profundo agradecimento aos colaboradores e voluntários da delegação de Braga da Cruz Vermelha. Vocês são os grandes responsáveis por aquilo que somos. E é convosco que nós queremos construir. Nós, direção, somos de a vossa voz. Mas os resultados que vocês têm obtido são vossos. E por esse motivo, a vocês, colaboradores, voluntários, da delegação de Braga, também o nosso muito obrigado pelo vosso comprometimento, pelo vosso espírito missionário, pelo vosso alinhamento com os nossos servidores. Eu termino com uma frase da Presidente da Federação Internacional do Vermelho. É preciso, urgentemente, redescobrir a humanidade uns nos outros. A humanização e o reforço da dignidade das pessoas são pedras basilares da nossa intervenção. Muito obrigado a todos.
Agradecemos então, Sr. Presidente da Cruz Vermelha da Delegação de Braga. Antes de passar a palavra ao segundo convidado, gostaria de informar que na Rua de Camões há um veículo com matrícula 88VX45 que necessita de ser retirado. 88VX45. Muito bem. Obrigada. Mas volte rapidinho, está bem aí, menino? Muito bem. Porque senão agora vai perder as maravilhosas palavras do nosso Presidente, Dr. Ricardo Rio, Presidente da Câmara Municipal de Braga, a quem eu convido para vir aqui ao palco. Obrigada.
Bom dia a todas e a todos. Sr. Presidente da Cruz Vermelha Nacional, Dr. António Saraiva, Sr. Presidente da Cruz Vermelha de Braga, Sr. João Fassara Guedes, Sr. Delegado Distrital, Dr. Semana Global, demais dirigentes internacionais, nacionais, distritais e locais da Cruz Vermelha, representantes de múltiplas entidades representantes, o nosso Presidente da Bahia, do BSP, da GNR, Sra. Vereadora, ex-Presidente da Cruz Vermelha de Braga, Fernando Osório e outros colaboradores e voluntários aqui presentes e mais parceiros. Em primeiro lugar, parabéns e obrigado à Cruz Vermelha. Nestas palavras que aqui foram referidas pelo engenheiro Júlio, obviamente já ficou patente muito do legado que a Cruz Vermelha, ao longo destas décadas de história, nos tem dado a nível internacional, da resposta sempre presente para apoio àqueles que mais necessitam, de prestação de cuidados e de respostas, obviamente, fundamentais para promovermos uma sociedade mais justa, mais inclusiva, capaz de atender às necessidades de quem, num determinado momento da sua vida, está confrontado com dificuldades acrescidas, seja do ponto de vista habitacional, seja do ponto de vista alimentar, clínico, de acesso a qualificações para poder se integrar novamente no mercado de trabalho. E se nós transpusermos este esforço que a Cruz Vermelha faz a nível internacional para aquilo que é a nossa realidade mais próxima, não há, bem pelo contrário, nenhuma desvalorização desse mesmo contributo, porque também, localmente, a Cruz Vermelha tem tido, ao longo dos anos, um papel fundamental para responder a franjas da população que, obviamente, merecem a atenção e o carinho de todos. A população sem abrigo, a população das minorias étnicas, a população com menos condições económicas, enfim, são muitas as respostas que têm sido desenvolvidas e que nos ajudam, a nós, aos poderes públicos, a toda a sociedade, de uma forma coletiva, a trabalhar em benefício de uma sociedade e de uma cidade, neste caso concreto, mais inclusiva e mais capaz de atender a todas as franjas da população. E, portanto, obviamente, muitos parabéns, muito obrigado a todos aqueles, esses milhares, algumas centenas, seguramente também localmente, que têm estado envolvidos em todas as dimensões dessa mesma resposta. Depois, uma palavra relativamente a esta iniciativa e ao tema que trouxeram para esta iniciativa em particular. Ou para os temas. Há aqui dois em particular que eu gostaria de destacar. O primeiro, porque os Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável, que agora também eram evocados pelo engenheiro Júlio, é um conjunto de metas de natureza global que, como muito tenho apregoado nos mais diversos contextos de desenvolvimento internacional, estou em representação da cidade de Braga e com vários outros colegas à escala global, só se podem materializar com o envolvimento direto das cidades, com respostas locais. E não é por acaso que, desde há 12 anos atrás, o município de Braga tem estado na vanguarda também do compromisso com os Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável, incorporou os Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável enquanto ferramenta fundamental de monitorização e de acompanhamento do desempenho do desenvolvimento a nível local, quer dentro do próprio universo municipal, quer em articulação com os nossos parceiros externos, e sempre numa lógica que é fundamental e que para mim diria, a maior mais-valia que os ODS nos trazem. Porque, como ainda agora, não parece muito rápido, ouvíamos até responsáveis dos Estados Unidos a dizer que a partir deste momento os Estados Unidos deixam de estar comprometidos com os ODS, vemos outros responsáveis internacionais, mesmo ao nível da União Europeia, apesar do discurso ser a prática ligeiramente diferente, os ODS também não estão totalmente incorporados naquilo que é a gestão das instituições europeias, mas dizia que qualquer que seja o formato, qualquer que seja o nome que se lhes queira atribuir, ou, digamos assim, a perspectiva sobre a ferramenta em si, há uma coisa que é incontornável. É que nós não podemos gerir nenhum território sem atender a esta perspectiva holística que os ODS nos dão. Nós não podemos concentrar-nos apenas no desenvolvimento económico, não podemos concentrar-nos apenas na componente da justiça social, não podemos concentrar-nos apenas na sustentabilidade ambiental, nem podemos, seguramente, promover nenhum desenvolvimento de nenhum território se não valorizarmos devidamente as parcerias e a colaboração entre todas as instituições. E, portanto, qualquer que seja a ferramenta, qualquer que seja a forma de monitorização do nosso desempenho, todos temos que ter consciência que temos de trabalhar em simultâneo, em contínuo, para tratar todos esses diferentes objetivos, sabendo que muitas vezes existem trade-offs entre cada um deles e que uns podem acarretar um pior desempenho ao nível dos outros, e, portanto, o grande desafio para todas as sociedades é conseguir atingir um nível de equilíbrio entre esses diferentes objetivos e metas para poder promover um total desenvolvimento sustentável, e o desenvolvimento sustentável também traduzido de uma forma muito direta é a garantia da qualidade de vida e da dignidade para todas as pessoas. É isso que se trata. Não vale a pena estarmos a olhar para isto numa lógica muito abstrata. Quando nós falamos de desenvolvimento sustentável, estamos a falar, obviamente, de propiciar bem-estar às pessoas, e é nesse sentido que eles devem ser entendidos. E, portanto, também por isso, o município, como dizia, desde cedo começou a introduzir, digamos, o enquadramento dos ODS na gestão municipal e no universo municipal, a vários níveis, quer do ponto de vista estratégico, quer do ponto de vista operacional, com uma monitorização e uma prestação de contas também regular, que eu acho que é fundamental, termos essa accountability e podermos ir demonstrando qual é o nosso desempenho. E quando olhamos para o nosso desempenho, também ouvimos e percebemos aquilo que há bocadinho era dito pelo engenheiro Júlio. No caso de Braga, não houve propriamente uma divergência em relação aos objetivos, mas podemos dizê-lo hoje já de uma forma absolutamente taxativa. Nós não vamos chegar a 2030 com os objetivos concretizados e, portanto, estamos ainda a cerca de 70%, de acordo com o último relatório de sustentabilidade que produzimos em relação ao conjunto dos objetivos. Há uns que são mais avançados, outros menos, mas coletivamente estamos, Braga, a região norte, Portugal, o mundo inteiro, na verdade, muito aquém daquilo que seriam as metas traçadas, e também por isso é preciso começar a perspectivar o que é que vai ser o pós-2030. Mas, obviamente, que essa perspectiva é fundamental e ela tem que ser concretizada com o envolvimento dos territórios e, dentro de cada um dos territórios, com o envolvimento de todos os parceiros. E por isso também dizer que vejo com muito bons olhos que uma instituição como a Cruz Vermelha, com a transversalidade da sua atuação, traga também esse compromisso, esse envolvimento e essa discussão para uma iniciativa como esta. Dentro deste desenvolvimento sustentável, há, obviamente, a componente ambiental, e dentro da componente ambiental temos a componente climática, que é também fundamental. Acho que hoje só negacionistas podem pôr em causa aquilo que são as transformações que se estão a viver à escala planetária e que impactam diariamente no nosso dia-a-dia. Nós estamos muito mais expostos a fenómenos aleatórios, quase diria, da natureza, porque, obviamente, ninguém consegue controlar antecipadamente
quando é que vai ocorrer uma situação como aquela que significou em Valência, ou que nós tivemos algumas réplicas a uma escala menor em Lisboa, no Porto, em vários outros municípios. Ainda recentemente víamos, há cerca de uma semana atrás, num dia normal, quase de primavera, acho que era em Sesimbra ou noutro concelho qualquer no Alentejo, em que víamos grandes inundações, precisamente por uma coisa que é incontornável. Se há um grande volume de chuva num tempo reduzido, não há sistema de infraestruturas de drenagem que consiga comportar esse mesmo tipo de resposta e, portanto, obviamente estamos a lidar, e esse é apenas um dos exemplos, temos a questão dos fogos, temos a questão das secas, temos a questão das altas temperaturas e várias outras ocorrências que se vão verificando a nível internacional e nacional que vão colocando desafios acrescidos. E esta é uma questão particularmente importante porque isto também nos obriga a repensar as nossas sociedades e a repensar as nossas cidades e a ver como é que nós podemos reagir para minorar os impactos dessa realidade. Isso verifica-se a vários níveis, quer do ponto de vista dos investimentos, quer do ponto de vista da planificação global das cidades. Basta pensar, só para vos dar um exemplo também muito prático, aquilo que foram as orientações recentes ao nível das questões das margens relativamente às áreas que potencialmente podem arder na envolvência das habitações. Nós estamos nos habituando a ir conquistando os montes e as zonas verdes dos nossos territórios, mas hoje, obviamente, existem diretivas da Proteção Civil que obrigam a ter uma faixa de proteção em relação às residências. Isso é uma questão de natureza quase administrativa, mas depois há uma outra dimensão que é muito importante a calcular e onde a Cruz Vermelha tem um papel fundamental, que é da resposta de emergência a situações de proteção civil e de decorrência destas circunstâncias. E é uma nota muito breve que eu também queria deixar até para terminar, que tem a ver com isto. Nós, em verdade, não temos uma cultura de proteção civil na nossa sociedade, sobretudo nas sociedades ocidentais. Nós vimos isto ainda 15 dias atrás, a quando do apagão. Porque na Europa, a União Europeia, aqui há uns tempos atrás, aconselhou a alguns países, alguns Estados-membros também o fizeram, a que os cidadãos começassem a constituir o chamado kit de emergência para 3 dias de qualquer ocorrência. Na altura isso até foi tratado de uma forma um bocadinho jocosa, achincalhada até, porque toda a gente achou, agora vamos ser invadidos pelos doces aqui em Portugal, muito na vida, não é? Portanto, a verdade é que aquilo que ali foi disseminado, sendo num contexto quase militar, tem toda a aplicabilidade e aplicabilidade para outros contextos de emergência em que possamos estar confrontados, seja uma cheia, seja uma situação como um apagão que se verificou, e nós não temos, de facto, essa cultura. A reação da população a este tipo de circunstâncias é de quem não tem essa cultura, é de quem não está preparado para isso, e a responsabilidade da população não estar preparada para isso é das instituições públicas. E, portanto, acho que é um dos grandes desafios com que todos estamos confrontados, é, no futuro, trabalharmos para que, desde as mais jovens gerações, nós consigamos incutir essa cultura de como é que se reage a este tipo de ocorrências, quaisquer que elas sejam, que vão ser, infelizmente, cada vez mais frequentes. E, obviamente, que também aí, assim, instituições como a Cruz Vermelha podem ter um papel fundamental. Uma última nota, porque é também o vosso tema deste dia. Estas alterações climáticas não têm só impactos pontuais a nível local, como este que eu agora estava a referir. A nível planetário, o Global Parliament of Mayors promoveu recentemente uma iniciativa em conjunto com o British Council sobre o impacto sobre as migrações das alterações climáticas. E estamos a falar que, a nível global, vão ser seguramente mais de 200 milhões de pessoas que, nos próximos anos, vão ser obrigados a mudar da sua local de residência apenas por fatores ligados às alterações climáticas. Isto é algo que, do ponto de vista, digamos, internacional, na interligação entre as instituições internacionais e os Estados-membros, os governos de cada um dos países, e depois o impacto que é sentido nos diferentes territórios, isto obviamente se reflete mais numas cidades do que noutras, vai obrigar também uma estratégia concertada para podermos acomodar esses fenómenos, que esses sim são bastante mais planificáveis e bastante mais antecipáveis do que aqueles que resultam de uma circunstância apenas pontual num determinado território. Em qualquer contexto, eu estou certo que a Cruz Vermelha estará sempre na vanguarda da resposta e, por isso, estou obviamente grato, enquanto cidadão, desejando que também em Braga tenham o mínimo de trabalho possível, mas que, caso ele venha a ser necessário, estejam também à altura dessa responsabilidade. Muito obrigado pelos parabéns.
Muito obrigada pelas palavras, Dr. Ricardo Rio. Eu queria que o doutor ficasse aqui em cima de logo, mas quis fugir logo de mim, não sei porquê. Somos duas agora, não é? Somos duas. E o senhor chegou a tempo, o senhor foi tirar o carro já chegou a tempo. Muito bem, porquê que eu convido? Para então entregar sim, uma lembrança simbólica a dois elementos muito importantes e que sem eles este evento não seria possível. Gostaria de chamar então ao palco o Dr. António Saraiva, Presidente Nacional da Cruz Vermelha Portuguesa, e peço então que entregue esta lembrança do município. Gostaria de chamar também o engenheiro Júlio Fonseca, Presidente da Delegação de Braga, para receber também uma lembrança. Mas temos mais uma surpresa. Gostaria de convidar o Dr. João Medeiros para entregar também uma lembrança ao nosso Diretor-Geral, Dr. Miguel Cunha, uma lembrança do município. Dr. Miguel, pode subir ao palco, por favor. Eu estava a colocar. E aqui está. E obrigada por fazerem parte da Cruz Vermelha e deste movimento. Agora sim, obrigada. Muito obrigada. E vamos dar início então ao primeiro painel. Vamos mergulhar no primeiro painel da manhã, Crise Climática e os Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável. Contamos com oradoras de exceção que aceitaram um convite de vir ou de estar connosco, mesmo que de longe, para partilhar connosco visões, experiências e estratégias sobre as respostas a alterações climáticas no contexto da ação humanitária. A moderação está, só poderia estar, a cargo da nossa Marta Neves, a nossa focal point da crise climática na Cruz Vermelha Portuguesa, a quem chama ao palco. Uma salva de palmas para a Marta. E teremos aqui online a presença da doutora Nini Ikala Niemann, especialista, disse direitinho o nome? É Niemann? Sim. Nini, especialista em alterações climáticas na Federação Internacional da Cruz Vermelha e do Crescente Vermelho, com trabalho em agências como a ONU e organizações internacionais. Está então a acompanhar-nos online e gostaria de chamar também a palco a doutora Flor Monasso, com 17 anos de experiência no Climate Center da Federação Internacional da Cruz Vermelha e experiência global em adaptação localmente liderada. Thank you. Vamos então ouvir estas especialistas. Sim, se quiser. São giras de pé também, if you want. Sit.
Obrigada, Vera. Good morning, everyone. I will speak in English, so Sir can, yeah, you can take the translator off. Thank you. And Nini is hearing us, right, Luna? Not yet. Well, nevertheless, thank you all for being here. I would just like to express my sincere gratitude in being present in the house that hosted me for quite some time, where I have started my journey as a volunteer and then being integrated as a staff member, and now I'm working nationally. So really, I just want to let you know that the Red Cross, it is really a pleasure to be involved in it, and it is and it has a place for everyone. And my sincere gratitude in hosting such an important, I'm just taking it in right now. I'm just taking it in, sorry. Because it has been quite the journey up until now. And I'm really grateful. So we have Nini. Perfect. So yeah, no further ado, we are running a little bit late in time. Just to give you an overview of these mornings, we were thinking of a global perspective and then going through to the more local perspective. So the first panel, we will have Nini. She works in the IFRC, so International Federation of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, as a lead in climate change. and then she will give us a global overview. And then we will have Fleur. She works in the regional office. She works in the climate center representing the Europe region. So we will have a more focused on Europe presentation. And then in the second panel, we will have a presentation and a small discussion of with representatives of national societies, and also Robert, thank you all for being here. And they can give us their experience on how it has been to deal and tackle the climate crisis in the Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement. So, what do you suggest? Maybe we could go there so Nini presents and people are not looking at us constantly. So it's just social anxiety, sorry. So Nini, thank you so much for being here. We let you now talk and then we come up again. Okay? Perfect. Wait.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Esperava estar na bela cidade de Braga hoje, mas infelizmente estou a participar online. Antes de mais, desejo a todos bom dia da Cruz Vermelha. And that is how far my Portuguese goes, so I will now do the rest of the presentation in English. So colleagues, I'm here to talk a little bit about the climate crisis, provide an IFRC perspective, and just to get us started, really reflect on why should we, as humanitarians, as the Red Cross, care about the climate and environment? Should we even care about it? We often talk about climate change. It's really the topic we hear in the news. It is the topic that gets a lot of attention in policies, in politics. It's a topic that we see youth movements around. But just to reflect for a little second that yes, we are talking about the climate crisis. We are seeing that global temperatures have increased between 1 and 1.5 degrees Celsius from the pre-industrial era. And therefore we're seeing issues like sea level rise, temperature increases, heat waves, floods, drought become more frequent, more intense and last longer. And obviously this is caused by issues such as our energy use, our transport, our land use. But we're also seeing a biodiversity and ecosystem loss crisis. So 75% of land is currently altered, 25% of plants and species are threatened. And this is in large part due to issues, again, land use change, issues such as deforestation. And then thirdly, we're also seeing a pollution crisis, pollution of air, of water, of land, caused in large But of course, all these development goals are also interlinked. So if we want to make communities, support communities be more resilient to, say, floods or droughts or heat waves, that has a direct impact on their food security, Sustainable Development Goal 2. The fact that it protects people from heat waves contributes directly to SDG 3 around good health and human well-being. The way we manage water, we have more water even during drought periods, can contribute to SDG 6 around access to clean water and sanitation, etc. So while there is a specific SDG on climate action, it indeed affects all the other SDGs, and they are interlinked as well. As I've already mentioned, just to really emphasize the message, the climate change crisis is already a humanitarian crisis. Climate and weather extremes are displacing people, they're leading to food and water insecurity. Some areas of the world and some people within countries or cities are more affected than others, but it affects all of us. Where this takes us to then is, what does this mean for us as a Red Cross Red Crescent network? And it's all the more relevant to be reflecting on this today on World Red Cross Red Crescent Day. Some areas that we can see this most significantly is that I do think that we're seeing a commitment from the national societies, from branches, from the whole network to climate and environmental action. We're recognizing that this is a critical issue. We have around 140 national societies who have signed the Climate and Environment Charter for humanitarian organizations, including Portuguese Red Cross. It's a topic that's a strategic priority in the IFRC Strategy 2030, in our final budget. And critically, in the last couple of years, we've seen a shift that, okay, now we're starting to have a political commitment for climate and environmental action within the Red Cross Red Crescent. But how do we make this happen? How do we access the funding needed for that? And that's where the so-called Global Climate Resilience Platform comes in. This is a fundraising initiative that's really focused in a few years to access new types of funding and bring in new finance so that we can increase community-based climate action. And it's really about accessing new funding, non-humanitarian funding, and most critically, taking this funding to the most local level where the needs are the greatest. This is just to give you a quick snapshot of what this means. So the Global Climate Resilience Platform has a target. It was launched in 2022, so by 2027 to raise 1 billion Swiss francs. And to find funding not just from the traditional humanitarian donors or perhaps defense disaster management departments we're used to working with, but also finding climate finance within governments, within donors, working with partner national societies, but accessing also new funds such as the Green Climate Fund, development agencies, multilateral development banks, who we haven't worked that much with in the past, and also looking at innovative finance, the private sector, role of insurance, etc. And I really want to emphasize that in particular, in the humanitarian funding crisis we're facing this year, this is all the more important. We need to look into new types of partners and new sources of funding. So our ambition collectively is to reach 1 billion in 5 years, reaching 500 million people. It's focused on the 100 most climate vulnerable countries, but it is indeed meant to be there for all national societies, and with the ultimate aim of strengthening community resilience to climate change. It is a big ambition, but we are already on the way there, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about next. So what does climate action look like for the IFRC network? What is this action that we are already collectively taking? The Global Climate Resilience Platform to date, these are figures from January this year, had raised 300 million Swiss francs, 170 million through the IFRC, 150 million through partner national societies such as yourselves, American Red Cross, Spanish Red Cross, and others. So we're a third there in terms of the ambitious goal we had set ourselves as part of the platform. You can see that the programming, and I imagine not so surprisingly, is very strongly focused in Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, which is really most hit by the climate crisis, as well as in the Americas and Asia Pacific. and less funding, unfortunately, flowing to the Middle East, North Africa, and the Europe region. But we do think this is something we can shift, and we do really believe that we can bring more and more financing and programming to Europe as well, including Portugal. Some of the examples you can see on the pictures in the right include drought-resistant agriculture in Malawi. We're seeing some mangrove restoration to protect from coastal erosion and sea level rise in Jamaica. And we're seeing work around early warning systems, community early warning systems, and anticipatory action in Bangladesh in preparation of floods. This is just to give you a bit of an idea of the type of programming we're seeing under the Global Climate Resilience Platform. So how do we get there? How does a national society who is keen to access this funding and to scale up its climate programming, where do you start? This is where we talk about the climate action journey. This is a process we are currently piloting in a number of national societies, where it's really about the national society. So in your case, Portuguese Red Cross or your branch as well, setting your vision and priorities on climate. And some of the suggestions we have for this journey is starting by understanding what are the climate risks you as a national society face, what are the impacts in Portugal, or in particular in the area where your branch is located, and how is this impacting your ongoing work, whether it is first aid, whether it's awareness raising, whether it's youth action, both now and in the future. It's also about better understanding what's already happening, whether it's in your city, in your community, in your country around climate action. What are other stakeholders doing? What are existing government or partner policies in this space? And identifying your niche. So if you're particularly strong, for example, in health and first aid, then it makes sense to look at the climate links to that. You work a lot on youth action, looking at what are the links for climate and youth action, just as a couple of examples. It's also then about strengthening those partnerships, and I cannot overemphasize the importance of building partnerships, whether it's with government or private sector, really knowing what are other stakeholders doing in climate action and how you can work on this together, and what is it that you can offer that others aren't doing. And then, of course, it is also about scaling up our ability to do action, our capacity and understanding more about climate and how it affects our work. And through this understanding, through these partnerships, through this risk knowledge, through this capacity strengthening, that is the building pillars we see as then accessing more climate finance, being able to scale up more action and ultimately strengthen community resilience to climate change. Here you can see pictures of the climate working group from Pakistan and some of the community work ongoing in Nigeria around climate action. Where are we at now in terms of the climate action journey? We have 40 national societies that have started working on this across all regions. This was at January. The numbers are already higher now. We've carried out 20 climate risk assessments. We have 15 national societies who have developed their climate strategies. We have 20 climate working groups or task forces, including in Portuguese Red Cross. And this is something that has been funded by over 6 donors at the moment. In parallel with this, and I want to mention this since it has a specific relevance also for Portuguese Red Cross, we've been working with so-called climate champions. So the climate champions are ambassadors for climate. They're ambassadors who are promoting climate within their national society or branch. They're ambassadors who are bringing elements of a climate action journey to their national societies. They're profiling, providing evidence on climate action from their context to the broader network. And you can see here in the photo, Marta has been part of this as a youth climate champion. It's about giving thought leadership. It's about sharing ideas on climate. It's about climate diplomacy, building relationships with ministries in the country around climate. For example, hydromet agencies or climate working groups in your country. And it's also then about engaging in global climate policy and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, COPs, and these annual conferences, which I'm sure you all have heard about in the news. They always become a bit of a bigger media event. The last one was in Baku in Azerbaijan last year in November, and in this picture you can see Marta taking part in the COP. There's Norwegian Red Cross, IFRC from our Turkey office, There's Iraq Red Crescent and Jamaica Red Cross. So this gives a bit of a sense of the kind of objectives of the Climate Champions Initiative, and it's really been an honor having Portugal Red Cross as part of it and as a youth voice. Some of the types of results you can see, we always have 20 climate champions in any given cohort. There'll be a new group of climate champions starting soon. These are some of the results that the different champions have achieved. So high-level program launches with governments, donors and media of new climate programs, new memorandums of understanding with hydromet agencies, new proposals to donors, being part of new working groups with government on climate, launching the Early Warnings for All initiative, being part of regional climate weeks, being on government COP delegations and participating in COP. So in Portugal, for example, you have a new working group. You've been forming part now of, I understand, the Ministry of Defence Climate Working Group and participated in COP. So that just shows the type of actions that have been taken. That brings me to the end of my presentation, and just with the thoughts that indeed by protecting nature, we also protect lives. And this is very much work around climate and environment that we see contributing to our humanitarian imperative of saving lives, alleviating humanitarian suffering, and something that I think is very critical to be reflecting on World Red Cross Red Crescent Day. Thanks so much.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Nini?
now I can hear you.
Thank
yes.
you. Perfect. So we can go upstairs. So thank you, Nini, and thank you for bringing this global perspective on what we have to understand is that climate crisis affecting people, and for us to understand better in our daily lives how climate crisis is affecting us, it's through our health, it's through our we never know if it's going to rain, if it's going to be super cold, super hot. Last week was raining a lot. I had boots. This week, it's, well, very hot. But this is just normal, basic understanding of how, because normally people don't really relate it. So how the Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement has such an important role in tackling the climate crisis. Okay, and so this is the importance of this event, because normally in Portugal we don't have such a structured response to climate, but we are going for it, and so this is a very important event. If you have any questions for Nini, please keep it with you. We are running short on time, so we will go directly to Fleur. Nini, thank you. I will come back to you after Fleur's presentation to ask some questions. Don't go away. Thank you. So, Fleur, the floor is yours. I will be there. Okay.
Thank you, Morgan. Yeah. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to be here and an honor. Distinguished guests, congratulations with Red Crescent Day. I work for the Red Cross Climate Center, and the Climate Center is an IFRC reference center that was set up in 2002, because back then there was an understanding that climate change would have humanitarian consequences. And here we are. Unfortunately, we were right. We are an initiative of the IFRC and the Netherlands Red Cross, so we're hosted there. And over the years, we have seen a lot of evolution about climate science, and a lot of advances have been made. So we know much more than we knew back then. In this presentation, I will give you a few insights of what science is telling us about climate change. And I have a few slides around. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. No one back. Yeah, this is, you can see Nini and I work very closely, because you see we have the same images in our slides. But the IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the body of scientists that gather once every 4 to 6 years to tell us the status quo of what science is telling us. Oh, thank you so much. What science is telling us. And it's important for us as a Red Cross to follow that, because it's signed off by every government in the world, and it it's the basis for the climate change negotiations every year. So this is the status quo of the science that we all signed off on. And in the latest IPCC report, 2021, the statement was made, and you already referred to it, climate change is contributing to humanitarian crisis. And there's a climate change fingerprint in the patterns of threats, such as extreme conditions that trigger migration, hunger, and avoidable deaths. So for us, that's the key starting point. Then, as nicely put already forward in the president's speech of the Braga branch this morning, we see that this does increase inequality. And those who face the biggest brunt of the impacts are those who can least afford to, and have least resources and capacities to cope with the crisis. And that's not only in global scale, it's also locally that we see that. So in the city where I work, The Hague, you can see that the biggest hotspots of heat are the poorest neighborhoods who have least green. And if you work together with the neighborhood and tell them we can put nature-based solutions, we can plant a little bit of trees and bushes around to make sure that this neighborhood becomes a bit cooler, they say, no, we don't want that because that makes us feel unsafe. So that already points us to the very fact that we need, for this global problem, localized solutions. And we need to work with communities to help understand how we can effectively address some of these bigger problems that face us. And this is also why it's such a pleasure for me to be here in Braga. So we've been working with 30 national societies in Europe on an ambitious climate action roadmap to increase climate action in domestic agendas of Red Cross in Europe. And the Portuguese Red Cross is an active member in that process, but all we are pushing for is localization, because ultimately in each of the local contexts, the solutions will need to be different and they will need to be tailored to the risk perceptions of the communities that we serve. So here we go with the first bad message for Europe. Europe is warming twice as fast as the other regions. And that's primarily because, as you can see, the global temperature rise in the northern hemisphere is manifesting itself more strongly. And according to a recent research of the Eurobarometer done by the Europe Environmental Agency, they have seen that European countries, the current policies and the adaptation actions are not keeping pace with the rapidly growing risk that this warming will cause. So European countries are not ready to cope with some of these impacts. Then what is IPCC telling us? I will keep these type of slides very, very limited because I know that climate science always puts people nicely to sleep, but I will really keep this very short. The IPCC Sixth Assessment Report for the Mediterranean region, as you can see, the northwest part, the only reason why I wanted to show you this is that they tick off literally all of the risks, unfortunately. So risk for marine ecosystems, terrestrial ecosystems, water and drought, wildfires, inland flooding, coastal risk, agriculture and food production, health and well-being. So across all of these societal aspects, that climate change will cause impacts. And as you can also see, this is with high confidence, most of them. The only thing with medium confidence, that where they have a little bit more uncertainty of how it will manifest, it is around the inland floods. And they think that is primarily in the upper northern part, potentially increasing, but there's more uncertainty in science around that, and the rest is all high confidence. So that's not a very nice message. And this is a summary of what we can see. If the triangle is pointing up, it will increase, and if the triangle is a solid color, blue or orange, it means that it's coming with high uncertainty. So for this region, in particular, the mean warming and the heat extremes, the observed warming is obvious. But that is very same for the projections. If we go into a world of 1.5 degrees warming, we are with certainty that this will increase, the warming will further increase in this area. Same for the 4 degrees scenario. So we look at the different scenarios, the scenario of 1.5 degrees, if we are very ambitious in global emission cuts. If we're not successful, we might face a world which warms up with 4 degrees Celsius. And I have another slide that shows the difference between these two scenarios, but it's very important that we understand these different two scenarios and why it's so incredibly urgent to try and do everything we can to keep the temperature rise limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius for this century. For the cold extremes, it's better news. Observed cold days, extreme cold days are going down, and that trend will continue in both scenarios. For mean precipitation, there's a lot of uncertainty, so there are mixed messages in what was observed for this region, but we know that only in the worst case scenario that's really going down, I mean, the average rainfall. Heavy rainfall events, like heavier rainfall in shorter amount of time, also is a little bit more uncertain, so they know much less how that will manifest itself in this region. But again, in the worst case scenario, we can see that very clearly with high confidence that will be going up. Same for the dry conditions, it will all increase, but even the observed version, it's already observed that this is increasing, and the same for the two scenarios. The good scenario 1.5 is still showing that that trend will further continue. And with wind, there's also a little less unclarity. Now the last one, I promise, this is showing how much difference it means between a 1 degree warmer world, a 2 degree warmer world, and a 4 degree warmer world. So the problem is that every 10th degree extra can be translated in humanitarian consequences. And that's where we are. And that's why we need to really, really urgently call upon everyone, private sector, governments, institutions, to reduce our emissions. Because if we can see only the first one, you can see that already at 1 degree temperature rise, which we already reached, it's with high certainty that the water quality and availability will be at risk in this region, which means that it starts with moderate risk, but it will soon, at 1.5, already goes to a high risk. And if we reach that threshold there of 2 degrees, you can see it moves into that high risk, and by 3 degrees, it moves into the very high risk. So it matters. It matters how much the temperature warms. And many times I hear people say, only half a degree extra. What does it matter? It matters because it translates directly into the humanitarian consequences that we face. So for all of these key risks in the Mediterranean, which are already mentioned also by the mayor earlier, water quality, wildfires, freshwater, marine ecosystem, food production, health and well-being, coastal risk, those are all also agendas of the Red Cross in terms of emergency response, but also in preparedness for disasters and risk reduction. So it's essential that we keep in mind that the Red Cross also invests a lot in reducing the risks of disaster with the communities that we serve. The risk perception of local communities is often different than we anticipate. So if we, for instance, promote the use of warnings, weather forecasts, and really make sure that the weather forecasts become actionable for organizations, sectors, households, then we often see that the risk perception might not yet be where we want it to be. For instance, heat in the Netherlands is often not yet seen as the risk it is. But the heat, of course, a silent killer, is a major risk to society and causes a lot of mortality. So it's first also still an effort of awareness that we have to invest in. Now, I'll just go into a few slides. So the first one is wildfires. I actually wanted to start with heat, but I think that one is dropped. So let me first start with heat. I think heat is the most unacknowledged risk that we have. And for heat in Portugal, it means something completely different than heat in Holland. We already call it a heat wave when we reach 30, and then we're all, like, whole society is affected. But I think therefore also the exchange between countries, like we can learn a lot from the ways that Portugal deals with heat in Europe, in the northern part of Europe. But in principle, heat is a killer. And in 2023, we were again confronted with this fact where more than 47,000 people in Europe alone died during the heat wave. If there was a flood that killed 46,000 people, the whole world would be watching and screaming. But nobody does that for heat because they don't see excess mortality during a heat wave as an immediate. They don't recognize the fact that this is what it's causing. But it's massive if we think about those numbers. And even if we think about the fact that for heat, they're relatively simple and straightforward and cost-effective measures that we can take to reduce the impact. And that requires different things, working with communities to help them understand the risk impacts, to help to give them the tips of what to do during a heat wave. And those tips look slightly different in different societies, but there are many things that people do that are the wrong thing to do in a heat wave. So opening the windows and letting the heat in, for instance, thinking that it might cause breeze, but it doesn't. So there are many things that we can win if we invest in heat wave preparedness, and that can save lives and reduce morbidity. So wildfires, the same thing. In the projections, a recent study done for Portugal, it did say that, let me take it here, that there was a strong risk. Yeah, this was a recent study done in Portugal in 2024 by Cardoso Pereira and others, and they indicated that the days with very high to extreme fire danger across all emission scenarios and across all the time frames is significantly changing, especially in the southern and in the northeastern region of Portugal. So again, also here, we've seen the recent images from California, and I know that there are many people here in the room from the Red Cross who know much more about the details of what forest fires and what it entails to fight forest fires. But it's a huge concern. And the same with flood risks. Flood risks are often, like other risks, a compound with many factors contributing to it, from urban planning to population density and other factors. And basically what climate change is doing is magnifying that particular risk. So this is a picture from Lisbon 2022. Again, you know much more about the context in Portugal than I do. But again, here also, what a recent study shown in Portugal is that this risk for Lisbon is also increasing in certain neighborhoods. Now, there are many things that we can do to address climate change, and they evolve around mitigation. They revolve about adaptation. Mitigation is addressing the causes of climate change. Climate change mitigation means reducing our emissions, and we see a lot of initiative already in the Portuguese Red Cross and many others about changing our ways of working to make them more sustainable and to make them to help us reduce emissions at large. So the mitigation agenda is for all of us. The adaptation agenda, we are a humanitarian organization, experts in disasters and health. So inevitably, adaptation is, for the Red Cross, something that we have placed very, very high on the agenda. And adaptation can range from health, and we already heard nice examples from the mayor as well. It's also thinking about those emergency packages for households to cope with at least 72 hours of emergency, that you can be self-reliant. But it also means it also means a lot of nature-based solutions that can help us over the long term to reduce some of these risks. And there I found a couple of nice examples in Braga. So I was very pleased to see those. And I think here maybe there are a lot of people who were involved even in that particular aspect of them. And I know I'm going to not pronounce those parks, especially dedicated for adaptation initiatives, correctly in Portuguese, but I will try to make you at least aware of which parks I meant. Parque das Camélias. Yeah, good. Parque da Ponte, yeah, and river restoration and community involvement in the East River here in Braga. So maybe you've heard of all of these initiatives, but some of them are really geared towards reducing flood risks. Here you can see an example of a permeable pathway. So I was amazed by the wealth of initiatives that are already taken here in Braga itself with regards to climate change adaptation to help the community in Braga better cope with flood risks and heat in particular, also planting of those, replanting of those parks to really ensure that people can find cooling spaces outdoors in well-maintained parks, finding the shadow that they need. So it was impressive, and again, I think that's hopeful. So after this presentation of increasing risks, there's also a hopeful message. And there's the message that we can actually do something about A, the risks, and about 2, addressing those causes collectively and trying to empower everyone to see this topic as an urgent priority to help us divert the climate crisis into something that we can still manage as humanity. So I will stop here. No, sorry, I will not stop here. Still, what we very often hear is that most organizations and institutions around the world say, yeah, climate change, we need to plant trees, we need to recycle. But our message as a Red Cross, yes, absolutely, key priority, but we also need to make sure that we can cope, that people can cope with situations like this, that they can, and that we can do through a variety of topics. And I'll only list, so there are many here, many of the impacts listed, but also a number of solutions that we're working on. And Nini already pointed out the climate action journey, which is that structural way to first understand the risks in the locality very, very well, understand the vulnerabilities, understand all the stakeholders that can contribute to that solution. But here there's also another solution which we call anticipatory action. And that is taking action based on a weather forecast trigger that can trigger the funding for early actions. So prior to a potential disaster, the Red Cross has a financial mechanism internationally in place to make sure that even if we see an extreme weather forecast that is likely to cause a flood, we can implement and finance early actions that can help reduce the impact of that particular disaster. That's what we call anticipatory action, and in the humanitarian system that has quite changed a lot because many of the donations used to come after the disaster. And now we can mobilize before a disaster strikes. So it's a huge innovation that we have built and developed to be able to be better prepared for the climate crisis. And then locally led adaptation, again, it's already illustrated that we really need to work with communities, with stakeholders in communities to link up closely to that local risk perception and the local solutions that we cannot find in a blueprint anywhere at a global level. So this is a picture of the Italian Red Cross in action during a heat wave, supporting elderly and checking up on people. They have telephone circles, they have solidarity pushes to help people in neighborhoods to cope with heat. I want to thank you, and I'll show one of the, I think, best designed posters of the French Red Cross here, showing the submarine saying something like, yes, we will always be there to try and rescue you, but we prefer that we can avoid that from happening, from needing to happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fleur. Can we put on Nini now? Thank you. Okay. Not to give you anxiety, eco-anxiety, bear with us. The second panel, we will discuss more on how we are actually tackling the climate crisis, okay? But what I wanted here to make sure that it is something also that the mayor of Braga said, there is no culture in preparedness. So everything, when it happens, we are all ready to tackle, to respond, to mobilize everything and all of the resources. But what Nini was saying, and what Nini and Fleur were saying, is that we need to anticipate. We need to be ready before it. We need to be ready to respond in order not to have so much loss and damage, right? So, Nini, thank you for your presentation again. And I have a question. Does anyone have questions? Because I have questions, of course. But does anyone have questions? We have time for this. Not keeping you from the coffee break, I swear. Everything is timely. No questions? Oh, so I have to do my questions. Okay, I came prepared. Lucky us. Okay, so Nini, you were talking about the global platform, and for us as a national society, how do you think that we can leverage these partnerships with governments, with member states, with authorities, private sectors, and maybe positioning ourselves in the national climate crisis response?
Thanks so much, Marta. No, that's a very relevant question. I mean, I think in any kind of partnership building, there's different steps to it. One is understanding who are the stakeholders on climate, and those will probably be different for national level, for a branch, or at an even lower community level. So, the first thing I think is to understand or map the existing stakeholders, then to link up with them, have dialogues, get to know the people in that space, then identifying what it is that others are already doing and where is it that you bring value added or can have a niche, and then taking action. So there's obviously key kind of areas. Government is the one natural entry point, and I understand you're already working with the Ministry of Defense and the Climate Working Group. That's really excellent news. An obvious other one that comes to mind is the Ministry of Environment, and whether they have national or local branches as well, and that's a very key partner for accessing climate finance as well, knowing what the government priorities are in this space. So finding out ministries of environment or local actors in that space. Ministries of agriculture can be very relevant. We talked, or Fleur was really highlighting the issue of anticipatory action, so getting to know better the hydromet agencies, including any local departments they might have. Then obviously out of the government space, obviously cities and what are the city opportunities, and Braga, if there already is an understanding of adaptation taking place. I don't know, is there an adaptation plan in your city? Who's working on that? Which department is working on that? And linking the Red Cross branches with those kind of local government or city authorities working in that space. There's international organizations like ICLI, who we have a very interesting memorandum with as IFRC, and I know they have particular interest also in Spanish and Portuguese speaking cities, both within Europe and in the Americas and Africa, which could be of interest. And then in the private sector, I think that's a huge, huge potential. And we as the IFRC are also exploring away from our kind of traditional government partners, both as a partner and as a donor, what exists then as in foundations. Zurich Foundation has some very interesting work ongoing on heat waves and the role of insurance. But I'm sure Sarah will be speaking about from the Spanish perspective as well. A really interesting area of work. Early warning technologies, who are the technological organizations or companies out there who can help with early warning systems, technologies, alerts coming in terms of preparedness that the mayor was talking about earlier. Who can we partner with? We have partnerships globally with Google or Microsoft in that space. Who are the companies in Portugal to partner with on that? In terms of agricultural companies as well, that's something that I know in the Netherlands there's a lot of interest in collaborating with them around climate action, something that hasn't happened before. So that's maybe just to give a few ideas on that. I think we can support from the IFRC side and with Climate Centre in mapping actors, in building connections, and that is perhaps the steps to get started. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We actually have a question in the public.
Hi everyone, my name is João. Thank you for your fantastic presentations. Actually, I appreciate that you met Nina Braga. One thing I want to ask you is your point of view around climate migrants. Okay, because there's so many things happening here in Braga. We have a huge footprint on migration, and in terms of awareness, we are dealing with a strong problem here in housing and blah 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 blah. But what I meant to say is how we can prevent to be able to produce answers to climate migrants. Okay, because you talked about the climate and the environment, and nowadays we don't see migrants running out zone wars. This is quite something that we should be aware of. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I noticed we only briefly mentioned that in one of the slides. And indeed, I think from the IFRC's perspective, for migration and climate links, there's kind of three areas where we look at working. One is primarily in the kind of country you're coming from. How do we increase resilience and make livelihoods more sustainable there so that people don't have to leave? Secondly, when migrants are on the migratory path, how can they be more safe and less exposed to issues like heat? And then obviously at the point of arrival, how do you do integration of migrants into communities? How do you look at migrants being more affected by areas such as in housing or heat? So I do think this goes a bit back to Fleur's point on how solutions need to be localized. So it's really about understanding in your particular context who are the groups who are most vulnerable, what is the solutions that are on offer there, and how to work with them. But if we're looking at migration as an issue on climate migration linkages, then I think it is both a very local solution, but it's also how migrants get there, and also all the way back to where migrants have to leave from and flee from. How do we work on that collectively? We have some interesting work we've looked on this space in the Americas, and across the migratory corridor, all the way through, places like what does it mean, someone leaving Bolivia or Peru all the way to them going through Venezuela, Colombia, through the Darien Gap, on the way to the US and through Central America, really looking at the different needs on the different bits of the migratory pathway. So this could be an interesting area for us to pick up on, actually, and organize a whole session, and we can bring some of our migration colleagues on there and look at climate and migration specifically. So I would love to take you up on that topic, and not in a couple of minutes be able to answer it, but really unpack that further. And what does it mean for Portugal or for Braga specifically? Thank you for raising that really critical issue.
Thank you. Yeah, we could have another event just on migration, actually. So, do you want to add something on this question, Fleur?
I think Nini answered it really, really great. IPCC 2021 also emphasized with high certainty that across all regions, climate-induced migration will increase. So also the projections look quite grim on this one. And again, understanding how to reach migrant populations in cities or regions is a challenge. Understanding their risk perception and working with them to help them and to reach them and to trust government information about warnings, for instance, and about what to do. That those are serious challenges. And cannot necessarily easily be unpacked further. But thank you for raising it.
Yeah. And we have a lot of materials. We have a lot of, as we have seen here, we have a climate center. We have scientific approach. We have also a lot of these background work and experience from other national societies that have been tackling all of these problems, which is a problem. And so the benefit of working in a network with such great diversity is that we can actually learn and internally, and let this event be an entry point for this, which is for any other entities that are present to understand that the Red Cross really has all of this knowledge, that we have all of these material structure procedures, that we are backed with a huge movement of exceptional people with exceptional research and exceptional work. So whenever you are working in your plans, in your municipality strategies, please do reach to the Red Cross, because we are the ones that are the most close to the communities. And we really do bring these vulnerable community, any kind of people, but vulnerable communities' perspective to the table. So this is added value. This is fostering participation. This is engaging with the Red Cross as a civil protection agent that can really enrich and prepare us to have more structured and more resilient plans. But this is actually a problem for Red Cross in general. And I have a question, just a very quick question. Okay, sorry. But, so normally, because we all have this motivation to work, we all have these incredible materials, whatever, but normally for us, what lacks is financing, okay? And we could not actually do an event on climate and not talk about financing. So, Fleur, what is, in your perspective of Europe, okay, so more localized here in the region, what are the ways that you can see that can support us in this finance area of climate stuff? Thank you.
Yeah, so from the adaptation initiatives that I've seen in Braga, almost all of them were financed by the European Commission. So there's a lot of money under the Europe's adaptation mission. They have quite an ambitious scheme set up for their adaptation mission to help European countries to prepare better in the face of the climate crisis. And I think the core of this answer lies in Nini's reply, because it's partnerships. And I think what Europe is looking for is for bigger consortia to align and to shape with different types of expertise across any region or community or city to come up with adaptation solutions together with cross-disciplinary visions on how to shape such adaptation, because it often requires health expertise, ecosystem expertise, and a lot of other things. So I think that the core of the answer is partnerships. And I have brought in my goodie bag one very clear opportunity, or one very concrete opportunity that's coming up. And it's called Pathways to Resilience, which is also... Yeah, maybe we can put the slide up, because then you have the website. This is a very concrete opportunity that I want to pitch here in particular. This is funded through the adaptation mission as well. And it's an initiative that helps cities or regions to plan for invest in inclusive adaptation planning in their area, and to attach that to a concrete adaptation investment plan. So overall, this initiative gives away 21 million. So it's roughly 200,000 per city or per region. This is also an opportunity for the government. So only local authorities can apply, but they can apply in consortia. They can apply with members of civil society, academia, private sector, to make sure that there is an inclusive planning process, that this society can jointly think about their potential adaptation pathway. So it's very concrete, and I think Pathways to Resilience, I can switch the slide just to show you the website. Oh yeah, so it's already taking place in 2 regions in Portugal. So also the alignment, we can also knock on the doors of the government to hear how their planning is going. But a new round, a new call for proposals is coming up this June, and then more cities and more regions can apply. So I would love to encourage you to see that opportunity and to start that pathway planning. It's all about capacity strengthening to address the climate crisis altogether. There are top-notch research institutions in this consortium who will guide that process with very new and innovative tools to get there. So it's a bit of a bit of a promotion pitch, but concrete funding opportunity. Apologies for that. I don't see the website, but it's Pathways to Resilience.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you so much, both Nini and Fleur, for having the time and making space in your agendas to come here to also speak with us and to have some background on the climate crisis and why is it a humanitarian crisis as well, and the importance of our humanitarian action in the Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement. So thank you. I think Vera has something to say. Tem aqui este.
Eu posso usar este. Porque era o meu sonho usar público.
É um sonho.
Queria então agradecer. Thank you so much for your presentation. And we have a gift for you and for Marta too. Portanto, Rosana, obrigada. Agradecer e entregar aqui os brindes. Agradecimento. Uma salva de palmas para as nossas oradoras. Thank you so much. E vamos fazer agora um pequenino intervalo, ok? Toda a gente está desejosa pelo café e voltamos às 11h50 aqui no auditório, por favor. Mais ou menos 15 minutinhos. Está bem? 11h50. Obrigada. Coffee break é no piso de cima, é só sair do auditório, virar à esquerda e subir as escadas. Temos colegas a indicar o vosso caminho.
Aí depois temos aqui no
Retomamos então o nosso segundo painel dedicado à ação humanitária, ação local, alcance global. Este que é um dos motes da Cruz Vermelha. Cada gesto, por mais local e pequeno que seja, terá sempre repercussões globais. Hoje temos connosco convidados de ampla experiência no terreno, que vêm de diferentes geografias para enriquecer este momento com as suas histórias, estratégias e desafios. Vai ser em inglês. Não é, David? Vai ser em inglês. E peço então para subir ao palco o moderador deste painel, Dr. David Rodrigues, adjunto executivo da Delegação de Braga. Uma salva de palmas. Convido também Dr. Robert Kaufman, ex-diretor regional da Cruz Vermelha Internacional em África e coordenador da missão americana na Ucrânia. Thank you so much for joining us. Convido também doutora Sara Casas Osório, Lead of Climate and Environment Program, Spanish Red Cross da Cruz Vermelha Espanhola, especialista em integração e sustentabilidade nas respostas humanitárias. Por fim, não menos importante, Dr. Gonçalo Órfão, coordenador nacional da Emergência da Cruz Vermelha Portuguesa, com experiência em crises nacionais e internacionais. Obrigada aos quatro. Relembro que no final podemos ouvir aqui algumas perguntas do público. E obrigada.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you, with friends of Red Cross, different friends a long time in the Red Cross, and also from here is even better to see how many people are in the Red Cross in this day. The day when Luna is birthday, and if he's lived today, it was 96-year-old. And it was a pleasure for me to be here. In this place is also the place where 20 years ago, in 2005, we did also a national event for the flu, the bird flu. I don't know, gripe das aves. We did also with the federation, member of the federation, to the teams, the emergency teams, to prepare for the flu. And for me, it's an honor to be here, because this is the richness of the Red Cross. The richness of the Red Cross is we are a global organization, but present locally, and we have a lot of different branches present here in this event with this thematic, the climate crisis, and also the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is very, very, very interesting for me. Thank you so much to accept the invitation to be here, and thank you so much also to be present here. I will start because we don't have a lot of time, and we will try to be on time. My first question is to Rob, and thank you so much, Rob, to coming here. We are delighted to have a friend as you here, accept this invitation. From your experience in the American Red Cross, but also in the African region and also in the Eastern Europe right now, what does local action, global reach mean to you, and why it's so relevant now?
Thank you.
You need a mic.
Thank you so much.
And you need to put on.
Obrigado.
You are welcome. De nada.
I apologize that my Portuguese does not go further than that. Yet. I am really pleased to be here and to share this moment with you and so many of your colleagues. Thank you so much. I want to begin by offering a challenge. I was really inspired and reassured by the comments from the president of the Braga delegation and also the president of the municipality. How deeply they understood the challenges and how deeply they felt the need to do more. It reminded me of the real challenge we face. There is an expression in American English. I'm sure you have the same in Portuguese. The expression is speaking to choir. You know this one? Too often, we are only preaching to the choir. People who already know the issues. People who already believe in the need to do more. We need to grow the choir. This is a key element of bridging the challenge between local and national and global climate change and resilience. The challenges, or I should say, the barriers to success are things that require greater interaction and alignment and coordination from local to national and regional levels. First off, the situation as the president of one of the branches in Algarve I was just speaking with, he was explaining to me the exact issue. The situation is not static. It is very dynamic. The solution you have today may contribute to the problem tomorrow. You have to stay ready. And what's happening next door may be happening in your home also tomorrow, if you are not looking out and paying attention. The next thing is the risk is not, the risk of climate crisis is not in isolation. Other factors like migration and poverty and politics all contribute. Third, and then I will move on, the challenge, the barrier is intergenerational. We need the help of people like me who have gray hair and too many years to talk about, but also for young people, my children, who are now 19 and 20 years old. Somehow, we need the forum and the language to convince and persuade this great gap to get on the same page. To overcome these barriers, we need to be very creative and agile. This will not happen if we are not thinking intentionally about how to overcome these. And just very briefly, you asked about the American Red Cross. So I just share one example. There are many, but American Red Cross has a program. They call it the Pillow Project. The Pillow Project was taken up after the Katrina hurricane, when many young people fled with the things that they needed stuffed into their pillowcase. That was the only baggage they had. So the American Red Cross has built on this idea to help educate people about preparing to evacuate. What would you put in your pillowcase? There are many, many examples, and I would love to go on, but I don't want to be too greedy. So I turn it over to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. We are in the time. Now for you, Sarah. They have a mic for both. It's okay. Sarah, first of all, thank you for being here also. You have such a good example in the sister national society, the Spanish Red Cross, and you are developing their work a long time in this climate thematic. And we need this experience also in Portuguese Red Cross and sharing these moments in order to learn from your experience and give also, we are starting this journey in the Portuguese Red Cross. And the question for you is, what has been the role of Spanish Red Cross in the preparation and involvement of citizens to be more prepared for climate-related disasters? And what needs to change in the collaboration between the authorities and organizations like the Red Cross to improve the preparation?
Okay, thank you for the question, David. Well, it's a real honor to be here with all of you in representation of the Climate Change and Environmental Department of the Spanish Red Cross. And under this title, Local Action, Global Reach, that is the essence of our movement. Well, in Spain, we are suffering many extreme events like wildfires, heat waves, or like we suffered 6 months ago, the dam, the cat flows down. Well, all these events are destroying our nature, they are destroying our biodiversity, but what is worse, they are deepening the inequalities in communities. We know that vulnerable people are the first suffering the impact of climate change and is the most suffering. But so this must be our root to understand the risk that the vulnerable people are facing on due to the climate crisis. We need to transform, but throughout the understanding, throughout the knowledge that we can collect from communities, from the down to the top, we have to set up our programs. And this is the root of the program for the Spanish Red Cross. We have many programs in adaptation and also in mitigation. But we have this program even when we didn't know that it's called adaptation. It's 20 years ago, we were starting with river restoration, for example, with volunteers in all the local branches. Because we knew that something could be wrong if there were garbage in the river, in the source of the river. But worthy that the Red Cross knows this kind of thing. But it's even better that the community knows how to deal with these issues. So these groups base our program, and based on this knowledge, we have another experience. For example, we are now greening the red. That means that we are changing our behavior for being more sustainable. But it's not a matter, it's not an issue of cutting down the emission. It's not only planting trees for reforestation. We are doing this kind of things for improve the well-being of societies, of communities. We make reforestation in those places we recognize as suitable for increase or create jobs, for example. And we choose these reforestation regions if we think that the communities can get a benefit for this reforestation. For example, another example is the energy poverty project. We train people how to deal with energy at home. We make workshops and we deliver kits for micro-efficiency stuff, no? But at the same time, we make all of these actions. We are empower people for being more resilient in case of heat waves, for example, or cold waves. Because after knowing what are they facing, they can deal with these kind of things. So this is, as I mentioned, the root of our activity, of our action. So our role, as you ask, is threefold. No, we need to inform, we need to empower, and we need to join and commit people and connect partners. According to your second question, is was related to how and the role of the Spanish Red Cross. Well, we need to act as a bridge. No, we have to connect the communities with another authorities, with municipalities. For example, in Dana response or in the event of the Dana, we saw how this communication between communities, municipalities, or authorities was broken at all, and the result was catastrophic. That's it. So our action, our goal is to build these links between communities and global partners.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Now for you, Gonçalo, and thank you so much to be here. Also, we have a good example in the national society, in Portuguese Red Cross. It is a pleasure to have you with us today. Coming from this Robert's global perspective and other national societies like Sarah shared with us, certainly look back at the Portuguese Red Cross and the disaster response. We have some disaster occurring where our branches emergency was present. And the emergencies that are climate related, as we see in the first panel, this crisis came from this climate crisis, but are not related to the climate crisis. Can you tell us, in your perspective, on the readiness of our national society to respond for these disasters? Are we prepared? Are we organized enough?
Thank you, David, and thank you for the invitation. In fact, when you look back and when you think why is the National Emergency Coordinator in climate change table, you may ask we are very used to respond to emergency and to respond. But what should we change or what have we to change? And I think what we noticed today is that climate change is not only about responding, it's not only about emergency, and maybe we should start to change our mentality and the way we are working inside Red Cross to be truly effective to the future. So when we talk about emergency, all of us think about responding, but we talk a lot about preparedness. We talk about individual preparedness. We talk about empower people, connection people, and I think that's the point that all of us has to think about and start thinking when we start analyzing what are the real forces Red Cross capabilities to respond to a crisis. And taking the opportunity of growth, as said, the pillowcase, how many of us has a pillowcase? We are Red Cross. We know what is needed. But how many of us do really have a pillowcase? You know that American Red Cross take the opportunity of Katrina to grow that mentality, and we know also in emergency, in disaster, that maybe it's the correct word. It's not only emergency, it's disaster. With a cycle of disaster that you have to think about. But when we talk about disaster, we have also to take the opportunities of disaster to change our mentality and change the things are done in our country. Maybe it's what we are able to do now with blackout. Let's think about last words, let's think about our debriefing, individual debriefing, institutional debriefing of blackout, and what can we do, what can we change? Because only when it happened to us is when it has impact to change. I have also the experience of international expansion, namely Mozambique. And when we talk about Mozambique, we are talking about our other needs, but they are affected every year by disasters. It's just like a regular response that they are need to have. So if you have a cyclone every year, maybe you know what to do. If you have blackouts every week, maybe you know what to do. In Mozambique, what happened to us is very frequent. Every house has a generator because they are really don't have power electricity. And that's the point that we have to also understand that when we talk about climate change, we are very used to be in our comfort zone, that nothing happened to us because we are in Europe, developed country, in a non-high risk zone. But we see things are changing. All of us remember the 2017 wildfires, first in July, and what everyone says, okay, this is a rare phenomenon, it's not going to happen again, let's learn with this, let's prepare, but let's breathe. In October we have another, even worse. So it will happen. Then we have Leslie, now we have to blackout. No one knows, no one can tell us that it's not going to happen again. That's why we need, as Red Cross, to be ready for that. And about that, taking now the question of David, I think we also have to think about, because Red Cross has to work together. All areas of Red Cross need to have these capabilities to respond in a disaster, because on that point, everyone is needed. And we have to think more. We are very used to have the ambulance service, and for us, it's very easy to put ambulance on the field. We are proud of that. Internationally speaking, we are one of the best in Red Cross movement. So let's do more. Let's think what we can do more together and start thinking about preparedness, mitigation, new programs, community intervention, community empowerment, connections. We are a bridge, as Sarah says, with the community. We have 150 local branches spread nationally. So we are a truly local bridge to make the difference in our communities. And it only depends on each local branch to that happen. So this local action that we talk and the Federation says, let's start in local branches. Let's make it local action in each delegation to make it national and to make it spread in a global way. Thank
you so much, Marcel. Now, again, you, Robert, please. Sometimes, when we speak about individual action in climate change, it seems illegal. And then we talk about global reach, and it seems so far from us. How can local branches, like our local branch in Braga, but we have a lot of local branches here also, how we can impact the response in the climate crisis in your opinion?
Great, thank you. And I want to build on your comment about individual engagement also. I think there are two issues. As you say, David, when we think about the global crisis, it can feel too big. It can be overwhelming. It can be daunting. But it's important to remind ourselves of our mission and our role. Our mission is not to solve every problem. Our mission is to help people in need. And our role is not to be the hero. Our role is to be present. Our role is to model the behavior that can make a difference. When we think about it in these terms, it feels less overwhelming. But I believe it can be just as impactful. If every one of those 150 branches is present, is active in the fight and the argument against climate change, you will be helping people. You will be making a difference. The other thing is, I think at the local level, as I was saying, the barriers I was describing earlier, you cannot figure out the solution, I think, until you are honest about the barriers that make success difficult. And once you name them, if you agree that the different perceptions and preferences from the older people to the younger people, if you agree that the other factors, policies, how the community relates to migrants, poverty, if you agree that these types of things are barriers, then the solutions can become more clear, especially at the local level. That your engagement in these issues, your voice, is essential to informing how we need to act at a national level, at a regional level, at a global level. Fighting climate change requires this sort of both vertical conversation as well as the horizontal one. Because no one branch, no one country can mitigate or adapt to the effects of climate change without the others.
It's global. Thank you so much, Rob. Sarah, when we put the climate crisis in humanitarian crisis, this lens of the climate crisis, it makes sense for people to understand why the Red Cross and the Red Crescent would have an active role to protect the people in need, as Rob talked right now. But it can take different shapes, it can take different forms, and recently we have this impact of Valencia. We can talk about Valencia. Valencia is nearby. It's almost Portugal. It's in the Iberian Peninsula. And the question is, how was the role of Spanish Red Cross in the response to that?
After that, I would like to say that in Didana, before the Dana Street Valencia, we knew what happened, what could be happened in the following days, because we have all information from the meteorological systems. In fact, people was not ready for this extreme weather and these extreme rainfalls in the short time that happen. So even when we face this kind of events, seasonally in Valencia, because it's the condition of the meteorological system there and the mountains make that this kind of precipitation occur seasonally. We were not ready for this extreme event in this short time. So the Red Cross was prepared the day before the back strike, okay? But even though we lost all our documents, we were prepared, but not well prepared for the magnitude of the event. And what is crucial in this history is that the alert was not sending after the floods were rose even 2.5 meters. And this is the point, because the information and the collaboration between authorities, meteorological system, river management, wherever, NGOs, civil social system, and so on, were not work. Doesn't work. Didn't work. So this is the crucial point. But it's true that we need to prepare communities with activities as, for example, conservate nature. It's important to know how valuable is our resources and how values biodiversity that surround us. Because this is what is going to protect us for this extreme weather events. For example, in Valencia also happened that the soil was so dry, so it couldn't keep the water, and it was like a funnel directed to the beach. So we can restore the ecosystem. We have to work in nature. We have to face what people is risking, and all of these activities will make a good preparedness for them.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah. Now for you again, Gonzalo, and this is a very good example of Sarah. This regarding the coordination with the authorities, the government, national emergency response activities, the military forces have their procedure to responding to disasters and emergencies. And the Portuguese Red Cross, as a civil protection agent, bridges and interacts with all of these authorities. And we see right now the example of Spain. Is this coordination effective? What must change in the collaboration before disasters?